This is part 2 of my conversation with Gail Hayssen. Link to part 1 is in the description.
I actually published in 1 or 2 of my books a telepathy session that we did with Gail, because Gail is one of those people who just has psychic things happening all the time. And so I put Gail into the category of somebody who is truly a natural psychic, because she's not trying to do anything. It's just that she's, as compared to many people, she doesn't have the same kind of filters that other people have.
Gail Hayssen has worked as a successful subject in parapsychology experiments with Dr. Dean Radin, Russell Targ, and others. She's been featured in numerous books, documentaries, and papers, including the film Third Eye Spies. Gail has received an Honorary Ph.D. from the National Academy of Sciences in Mongolia. She's been having anomalous experiences since she was a child and is well known for her remote viewing abilities. Gail has a plethora of fascinating and enlightening stories to share and is also the host of her own podcast, A Small Medium at Large. Please see the description for relevant links, recommended books, and timestamps. A couple of other kind of more bizarre things I wanted to ask you about. So there was something I heard Dean Radin say just a couple of weeks ago on a podcast or an interview, some kind of conference thing he was doing with Avi Loeb. So kind of two great minds, very different minds, but both great minds in their own field, kind of pushing boundaries. Like Avi's a professor at Harvard looking into UFOs, UAP, and obviously Dean, we know Dean. Anyway, he mentioned something to Avi. He said, he talked about SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. You know, that's like, they have this in the US, and they use like radio waves and stuff like that, and they kind of trying to pick that up, and that's how they're looking for extraterrestrial intelligence. And Dean said, you know, with all the evidence that we have for remote viewing, would it not be like a much more like worthwhile pursuit to have a bunch of remote viewers trying to see if they can kind of perceive any other non-human consciousness out there in, you know, in the galaxy or wherever, rather than say. And I just thought that was really interesting. So I just wanted to get your kind of your 2 cents on it, really, your thoughts on it.
Well, my thoughts are, I'm sure that he could do that, conduct an experiment, gather remote viewers and see what information they came up with, or what contact, I myself personally had a UFO type experience when I was in my 20s. Mm-hmm. And it was when I was curious as to whether there was something else out there.
Right.
And I found it to be a very frightening experience. And so just like these other things, when a certain thing happens, it's like, I don't really want to have anything to do with it after that. So my feeling is, I don't doubt that there isn't something out there. It's really kind of small-minded of us to think that we're just the only thing in, but I don't know whether there's little people or aliens or, you know, any of this kind of thing, or if it's all just a level of consciousness that's much higher without bodies, or I have no idea. But I would rather leave that to the, you know, like Nick Cook, you know, people who are investigating these things from a scientific and intellectual point of view or whatever.
I understand. I think you've got to be careful before, trying to contact any intelligence that you don't know.
Exactly. So for me, it's been there, done that. No, I don't want to.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Would you be comfortable talking about your UFO experience, or is it something is it too personal?
You know, until I started the podcast thing, I've just done my 60th show, A Small Medium.
I just published my 60th the other day. Well, that's
that's so cute. Well, my 60th will be out on Wednesday.
Nice.
I haven't been on it. I haven't been interviewed in a while. You're the first show I've been on in a while. And I was doing a lot of interviews, and then I was interviewing other people, and the subject was coming up. So I finally decided to talk about it. And it did relieve me of some of the reason I talked about it was because I was hearing other people describe on their shows, because I listen to the person's podcast before I'm going to be on it, or if they're going to be on my show. So I try to watch a few of their shows. Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing descriptions of what I experienced, you know, some 40 years ago. And I'm thinking to myself, how could these people have had the same kind of thing that I had that I didn't tell anybody about, you know?
Yeah.
So there was something in that made me feel like it's better to,
liberated.
let the story out.
Definitely.
And I also sort of felt less like scared of it after hearing the other people tell similar stories.
Mm-hmm.
So the story is, in my mind, I'm wondering, is there really outer space? Is there really outer planetary? Because as a child, I didn't mention this, I used to do what they call astral projection, where
Okay.
I leave my body in our house in Flushing, in Queens, and I would fly. I called it flying because I was only 9 or whatever. I didn't know what the word would be, astral projection. So I called it flying. And I've since heard numerous other guests or other podcast people refer to that similar thing as a child. They say, well, I just called it flying. And from that flying, I would leave my body and I would see everyone, including my own self, sleeping in the bed. And I would just be in my house in Flushing. And I would go around and I would always be sort of toward the ceiling when I was flying.
Fascinating.
And then one day I decided, well, maybe I could expand that out and go further. Maybe I could go above and I was doing some retreats in my 20s, different, retreats about discovering the self or meditation and these different eye-opening things. And when I came back from the retreat, I said, maybe I could take that flying, and I did it as a kid, maybe it could come back to me as an adult and I could go and travel. And sure enough, I laid in my bed and I was able to leave and see my house in Sebastopol. Then I was able to see Sebastopol. Then I was able to see above, and I was looking at the state. And the next thing I knew, I was looking at the country. And I was like above all and seeing these amazing images. So that was when I then decided, well, I wonder if there is, other planetary things. I should go look while I'm doing this thing, flying or astral travel. And I can't tell you what happened that to make it make sense necessarily, but my body was laying in the bed, but the rest of me was being taken away. And my physical body was in this bed, but all of everything else that is made up of Gail was not there. And it was taken up into this, I don't know, it was sort of a scary kind of thing. And all I can describe is that it was sort of like stretched out looking images of grayness. And they were putting me on a table and I was being probed and sexually, some kind of very strange sexual things were happening. And that in itself was weird in itself. I'm a very sexual person, but I wasn't expecting it to be this kind of thing,
Yeah.
And it was a scary, I don't know. And I saw like a place that years later, I saw a science fiction movie and I said, oh my God, that looks like the place that I saw when I was in this whatever dream.
Whatever
I don't
know,
whatever this was. And it was like, what honeycombs look like, where you see the little circles of the honeycomb and the bee is going in each little thing.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like, but they were wrapped up like bodies in them. And I was just terrified.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to get back to my body in Earth. And I never told anyone about it when it happened in my 20s. I didn't even tell a therapist it scared the shit out of me. And I just never shared it. And then when I started hearing people describe similar things and then they have names for it and they've got colonies and I don't know, and it's like too much for me. But when they talked about the grays, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that looked like what they're describing, like what I'm experiencing, and other ones talking about these strange probing and sexual things. So after hearing other people say it, it made me start to think back to the past, that what I've been shoving down maybe was a real experience, or maybe it, I don't know, because I never wanted to know about it after I was so terrified.
Yeah.
But I never felt like it was a dream.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. And I mean, I want to ask you in a minute how you kind of got back to your body, if you recall, but yeah, I mean, there's no surprise you were terrified. And when you said like, you don't know if it's real, I mean, I guess it kind of was real and not real at the same time, right? Like a lot of this stuff, like it's not physical, it's not, but it doesn't mean it's not real. Certainly a real experience either way. And then obviously the psychological effects of that experience are real. And then it's just, what was the experience? And you're definitely not the first person I've spoken to that has told me about an experience and has said, essentially, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was, how real it was, or if it was a dream, or if it wasn't a dream, or, it sounds terrifying.
Yeah. And people, and I'm not saying people have all these wonderful positive learning experiences and downloads they talk about and all this other stuff. So I'm not saying that the UFO or this kind of searching or seeking is a totally negative thing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that one experience I had, that way for me. That's all.
Yeah, but of course it would be. It's this. I mean, think of it like this: like if a fireman saves a kitten, from like a basement or something, or a building that's on fire, the kitten's probably going to be terrified of this person with a big helmet and mask, like grabbing them and physically moving them and everything, and there's chaos all around. But obviously, it's trying to help. We have no way really of knowing, do we? At least agendas and that kind of thing. But wow, I'm glad you shared it, because like you said, I mean, the more people that share these kind of experiences, the more people will feel liberated to share their own. It's the same with psychic phenomena. It's the same with, after death communication and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's powerful. So you remember seeing these beings and they looked like the typical gray being that you see in the media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you remember how you got back to your body?
I almost felt like it was like I was dropped back, like I came back, like thinking of my body being level like this, and went down into it. Wow. Like that.
Was there like a moment where you had to escape from the craft or whatever it was? Did that just kind of?
With no time in that experience, I couldn't tell you if I was gone for hours or 2 minutes. There was no relating to that part of it.
Yeah,
and there was no like, oh, I woke up and I had just fallen asleep, or nothing like that. There's nothing I could. I just know I was in my 20s. I still live in the same house that I had the experience in.
Yeah.
In fact, bedroom right above me from where I'm talking to you.
Yeah. I guess sorry, what, Gail?
And I consciously said, I never want to have this experience ever again.
Yeah. No, not surprising again. I guess when you woke up, did you like check your body if there was any marks or any kind of, evidence of something, or did you just assume because you'd done the astral thing?
Happy that I was in my bed, in my body.
Yeah.
It's more of a gratefulness that this is where I was, from this feeling of being captured and taken away.
Yeah. Maybe on some level you didn't want to know either, I suppose, if it was
no, as I said, I never, and I don't keep secrets. I'm not that kind of person. I just never shared it with anyone, because it just was, I don't know. And I'll share my rapings, my, kind of everything that ever happened to me. But for some reason, that one particular one I never shared.
No. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there are probably a lot of people that have had some kind of similar experience to that they will take to the grave. And hopefully the more, as I say, the more it's talked about, the more people will feel able to talk about it. But
that's a fact, because it's what made me talk about it, was hearing these people say these things. And I could have said, oh, they're crazy, oh, there's no such thing, but I kept saying, oh wow, that was like what I had. So that's one of the things I say in my podcast always, is share your stories, because stories can heal. And just one person might learn something about themselves by something you've said. So I'm grateful to those people who shared those scary stories from their point of views.
Yeah, definitely. To go back to a couple of other remote viewing things, and like, again, bizarre kind of twists on it that I've been thinking about. So remote viewing, like really bizarre places on Earth, or like really remote places on Earth. So like the Mariana Trench. I don't know if you saw in the news earlier this year, there was some UFOs that were shot down over Alaska. So for example, like if you decided, I'd like to try and remote view these UFOs that were shot down over the ice in Alaska, is that something, would that be feasible, do you think? Not necessarily for you to do today or anything, but in general, what What do you think about doing something like that?
I'm not sure that it's that much different than remote view. That photo I showed you.
Yeah.
It's
although is it easier in a way because there's likely to be still some kind of physical debris there, unless it's been recovered by the government secretly. But yeah.
Well, if I compared what it was like to do the remote viewing with another human at the other end who's standing in front of what I'm supposed to remote view, I didn't find a whole lot of difference between that and sitting with Russell and a photograph or an object. It didn't feel any different in the connection, or I mean, maybe some of the things like I feel like he wants a cup of coffee, I was connecting into his personal feelings, which would be separate than the actual targets if you're looking at an object or a photograph. But to look at something like that would not be the same as looking for, if you're remote viewing and it's in Alaska and the object is there, that would be different, say, than telling yourself to go out into the universe somewhere and see if there's life forms in other places or some form of life. That would be a different type of remote viewing, I think. That one would seem easier if it's an actual something that's sitting there that you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, I'd love it if somebody could try that, because I'd love to know where they are and what happened with them. And I guess I'm thinking as well, so like, again, I don't know how interested or aware of the UFO stuff you are, but I won't go into it all now, but if there was a craft that was being, of non-human origin, that was being held somewhere in, let's say, the US by either a kind of section of government or by an aerospace company or whatever, but you didn't know the location, like you just knew that there was, and you didn't know what the craft looked like, you just know that there is something being held and it's top secret and it's technological and blah, blah, blah. Is that enough to try and go on, or is that like, are you just kind of...
Well, it's not the kind of remote viewing I would want to do, because I don't have any interest in that field of the UFOs. As I said, I have to leave it for other people. I got enough to do with whatever it is that I do. But I do think that there are remote viewers out there that would not have any difficulty in... How would that be any different than remote viewing, a military site or something that hasn't been built yet, or Stephan Schwartz is finding Atlantis or wherever, well, not Atlantis, I forget, the Queen Elizabeth or I forget who they were, but he found the most amazing archaeological sites underwater with submarines and remote viewers. So if you can take a remote viewer in a submarine and they can find missing ships and things that people have been looking for years and years for, why couldn't they do that with a craft?
Feels almost like there's like unlimited potential, right? I feel like we can let's remote view how the pyramids were built and finally put that one to rest. Let's finally get the answer to that. There's so many different things like that, like let's go back and remote view there's some stuff from the Bible and see what the deal is there, like how bad was this flood really, and how big was the boat. Have you ever tried to remote view another planet?
I think I'm not sure if once we went, I can't remember if we tried to, if I remote viewed and went to a planet. I've had that experience once on a psychedelic drug, but I don't know that I actually did that. I don't think I did it with a remote viewing, but I did it when I was doing psychedelics as a teenager. I had an experience of going to the moon. And on the moon.
Wow. And if it was a normal not that you're not normal. If it was me, I'd be like, I probably made that up. With Gail, I'm like, it could well have been the moon. You could well have been really seeing the moon up there. Wow. So obviously we talked about remote viewing the future, remote viewing 2060. What about remote viewing the past? I just mentioned the pyramids, but have you ever tried to remote view the past, and is it the same kind of thing essentially?
I don't remember remote viewing the past particularly. When you think of that question of how the pyramids were built,
you're going to try that for me, aren't you? You're going to let me know.
No, I have this feeling that there's two things that I still feel. I feel that some things are supposed to remain a mystery.
Okay.
And that the acceptance of the fact that it's a mystery is fine with me.
Yeah.
And the other one is that some of it is just magic.
Yeah.
You know, Radin wrote a book about magic.
Real
And
magic.
yeah, and I honor all these researchers and scientists and investigators doing what it is, but for my own self, I have a certain acceptance that doesn't. I have no interest or I have no curiosity of how they built the pyramids. I just accept that this is a mystery, and it's supposed to be left that way. I don't know that we're supposed to know the reasons of everything and how it began. That's just my own.
I totally see your perspective. I still kind of want to know, but,
Right,
but no,
right.
I totally see your side.
People that want to do that instead of people like me who are happy just with the way it is.
No, but I'm sure with some things I would totally agree that like it's like best to be left and yeah, I mean I don't disagree. It's absolutely it's a legitimate kind of point of view or stance, should we say. But yeah, so the past, that's interesting. Maybe if we can think of something that, you know, like that you're happy to unravel a mystery on, we can see some past remote viewing.
There's what I want to say
the dinosaurs.
We've discussed remote viewing and we don't have time to go into the other parts of the things that I have going on in my life.
Yeah, next time.
Shamanism is very important to me in my life.
Yeah.
And I do these different shamanic, I don't know, call them blessings or healings. I don't like to ever, I'm not saying, I'll heal you or whatever, this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But when I do those with people, I do get information from the past.
Yeah.
It's not a remote viewing. I just did I'm studying sound healing right now with just this wonderful man, Renee Jenkins, who was on one of my podcasts and discusses sound healing. And I've been using sound in my shamanic work with people. So I thought, gee, I don't know what I'm doing. I should really take a sound healing class. So I've been studying with him the last few classes. And he asked me to do a shamanic healing on his wife, who was having some back problems. And also because as a student, he wants to see what am I doing when I'm doing these things. Mm-hmm. So we just did this on Monday. And information comes to me that is from the past about the person's illness or something. And I just say it to them. So in this one, I don't know who her mother is or any of this kind of thing, but for some reason, I just know, I know the mother is dead, that I knew, but I know that the words that I'm hearing that I'm supposed to tell the person is not the words that this woman would have said when she was alive. And I don't know how I know that, and that's the past because the person is dead.
Yeah.
But I say to her, I'm just hearing that this is something your mother never would have said to you in her life when she was living. But as a spirit in the deceased world right now, she's saying, you need to enjoy life more. You need to have more fun. And I don't know where that information comes from, but the woman that I'm saying it to knows exactly what I'm talking about and exactly what I have to say about the mother, that was not something she would have said when she was alive.
Yeah.
But I don't know where that, and that I consider past information, but I don't know. So past information does come to me, but not like in a remote viewing way, but in more of a shamanic way in working with people.
It's fascinating the way it kind of spontaneously comes again. I spoke to a scientist and Reiki, healer, Reiki person. Anyway, she.
Reiki master,
Oh, you do that as well? Yeah. In fact, she is a Reiki master, I think. Yeah. So I guess you have the same experience with Reiki because this lady Natalie Dyer. She told me that when she does a Reiki thing with somebody, she will sometimes or often get just kind of random, like basically a telepathic reading or something, but just kind of it will just come spontaneously, and she'll kind of mention, oh, by the way, I'm getting this come through and this come through.
Well, your question is making me think. about when you say the past, I'm thinking, and I was thinking, oh no, I have nothing to say about that, but actually I do.
Yeah.
A friend of mine in Chicago asked me to come to his house because he had it on the market. It was in Highland Park. It was, a multi-million-dollar estate, and it was 4 or 5 stories. I think 4 stories, and then a basement. And the last time I had gone there 14 years earlier, I ran out screaming in terror because there was something in the upstairs of his home that had happened. That's the past. And it left an energy that made my hair stand up when I walked up into the room. I left that morning. I didn't even stay for breakfast, and I found somebody else's, another friend's house to stay at because I couldn't stay in that building. Flash forward 14 or more years later, I've done all this shamanic work. I've done remote viewing. I've done all these things that have made me stronger inside as a being. And he says, I can't sell my house. I don't know if you can come here and do something to make it so that I could sell the house. And I say, well, I'll come with my son, Richard. And we go out to Chicago. We go to the house, and we're going to stay for 4 or 5 days. I go up to the same place where I had the scary feeling, and it's still there. And I say to him, I don't understand how people have slept in this room all these years. Yeah. He said, I've had so many. He said, only you and that friend of yours, Ray, are the only people who've ever done this experience sleeping here and tell me leave screaming that they're terrified. He said, everybody else sleeps here, has a good time. There's no problem. I don't know what your problem is. So that night, she asks me, can you tell us anything about the house? And that night, I've had this very good fortune of being able to ask for information in a dream, and then it comes. So when I went to sleep, I said to the dream world, could you tell me what's with this house? And I have this dream that there's these 2 kind of, I could tell they were like European or Italian or something, but they weren't white skinned people. And it seemed they were from another country. And I'm seeing these people, and they're throwing all the possessions from this mansion into the ravine that leads out to Lake Michigan. And they're throwing the stuff in the ravine. And when I wake up, I say to them, I asked a dream, and the dream told me that all of this, this house had been just robbed blind by this couple or these 2 people, and everything was thrown out into the ravine. And the wife of my friend, her face turns white, and she brings out a book of the history of the house, that all the news clippings, because it had been part of, like, I don't know, it was a big candy company person who built it or somebody, from the old days. And the woman was living alone in the house in the giant mansion by herself, and she had to be hospitalized. And in the article, while she was hospitalized, people came in and just ransacked the house and did exactly what I saw in the dream. Things were all thrown into the ravine, and stuff was all stolen and taken. So when she said that and showed me the article, I knew, and that was 1947. So I knew that this had happened. I think it was the late 40s, whatever the year was.
Yeah.
And so I said, when I have the moment, I'm going to do a shamanic and Reiki cleansing of your house. So I took my Mongolian incense, and I took my Reiki symbols, and I did Reiki and smudging, starting at the top floor in the room where I think the incident happened, and some type of an incident. Yeah. And I started there. It took me close to 2 hours, and I did the whole house from top to bottom, and only saying each time, as I'm doing with my feathers, whatever is here needs to leave now. Whatever is here needs to leave now. The house had been up for sale for over 2 years with not one offer. A real estate agent came in 2 days after I did the cleansing on the house, and the people that saw it put a bid in immediately, and the house sold in 6 weeks for $2.9 million, which was a lot of money back then.
Wow. Yeah.
My friend was very thrilled. Whether it was coincidental, I don't know. You know what I mean? I can't answer that.
The skeptic would say it was just the smell of your lovely Mongolian incense that sold the house. But no, I mean, it sounds like incredible. I mean, yeah, again, I know you can't say 100% certain, like, yeah, it was coincidence, it wasn't a coincidence,
And then
but
he
it's pretty
wanted to,
compelling.
yes, and he wanted to pay me because he was a wealthy man.
Uh-huh.
So he wanted to pay me for doing this. And I said, no, I can't accept any money for this. So one day when he was visiting us, he put $1,000 in an envelope in a drawer in my house. And when he left, he said, you need landscaping. You don't have any landscaping in your house in the front. You need to get plants and get a landscaper. Open up the drawer. I've left you money for you to do that. So I was willing to accept it because he was giving it to me. He was really giving it to me for what had happened in Chicago, but I was accepting it because he was giving it to me to do something on my property.
Yeah, yeah.
So he, who was not, I mean, this man was a big stockbroker person on the Chicago Stock Exchange or whatever. He was not into spirituality. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And he called me.
Yeah, yeah. And he felt like he owed you something for that. He felt like, AKA, that you'd had an impact and effect.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. You just mentioned stockbroker. So I guess just a really quick question. Have you ever thought, or have you ever remote viewed or tried to remote view lottery numbers, stocks, shares, sports results, anything like that? And I'm not trying to get at whether you've secretly made billions of pounds and, in an offshore account somewhere, but even just for your own, amusement, just for fun, just to see, like, am I going to...
I was in some remote viewing group or something where we were doing something for the Powerball numbers, something called Powerball. I didn't even know what the Powerball was because I don't do those things. What I have had is times in Las Vegas where I can control the dice, or I know I've had strange incidents where I met a person on a street here in Sebastopol at a copy machine who turned out to be someone who was in a lawsuit with Russell from a zillion years ago about some, I don't know who wrote what or something, whatever. And Russell was cleared and it all cleared up. But this guy was like a crazy guy that was trying to attack them. And oddly, that I would meet him and tell Russell that years later, because I didn't even know Russell then. And when I said to him, I'm going to Las Vegas, I said, with these girls, we're all 28 years old. I said, I don't gamble. And he looked at me and he said, these are the two numbers on the roulette table you should play. And I write the numbers down on a little piece of paper. And the next day I'm leaving with these group of girls who are all hardworking girls, and they're going to blow all their money gambling. I'm not a drinker and I'm not a gambler, but I wanted to go and see what 28-year-old girls do. And I was 28. And we're in a limousine and we're going up to Reno or wherever it was. Reno, Las Vegas. I think it was Reno. Yeah, because it was closer. We went to Reno. And I'm watching them throw their money away. And I'm thinking to myself, God, this is fun,
Yeah.
But, and I all of a sudden remembered the little piece of paper in my pants pocket. So I go over to a roulette table, and I only, like, when I gambled, the thing with me with gambling is I always had a $20 limit. After I lose my $20, then I don't play anymore. Yeah, but $20 I could last sometimes for hours, by continually winning.
Why am I not surprised?
So I don't gamble any big money, and I just take my $2, and I don't know how to play roulette. So my neighbor had been trying to teach me before I went for this, little excursion of gambling, how to play the game. And he tells me, anyways, I'll tell you about the roulette after. So I go over to the roulette table and I'm with one of the girls, and I could see none of the girls liked me because I wasn't boozing it up, and I don't know, I wasn't dressing in whatever. I don't know. I just wasn't like them. And I sort of felt out of place, like they really didn't like me. But when I did this maneuver, they were my best friends after that. I just walked over blindly out of nowhere like this and just went up to a roulette table and just plunked my $2 chip thing or whatever on the number that was in my pants pocket. And that number came up instantly. The exact number the man in Sebastopol told me to use. Wow. Now, this is a two-way combination because I had to know somehow when to just walk over and do it that minute.
Yeah, timing the table, yeah.
When I told the girl, I said, a man in Sebastopol told me to use that number. she didn't believe me, and I pulled out the paper. And I didn't have enough time to do the second bet because you know how fast it goes in the roulette. And sure enough, the second number he had said came up. So
like
I
straight
won
after the first one.
straight after the first one, but I hadn't the time or the mind to think about it because I don't take any of these things for granted. When any of these things happen, it doesn't matter that I've been doing it for 50, 60 years. When it happens, I still always go, wow, that's a surprise. It's always a surprise. And so when I showed them the paper and I got my $36 because you get the full money on, of course, if I had bet $10, I would have had a lot more money.
Yeah.
And showed her that this was a two-way thing. And then when I met the man on the street, because he was a, struggling guy financially, I gave him, he would never accept money from me. I gave him all the money from the $36 from the winnings. And he was willing to accept it because he felt that he had participated in that, psychic, whatever connection and the others. And then another time I went there and it was during the International Remote Viewing Conference. And when they always had these in Las Vegas, a lot of people on the breaks would go and do gambling in between or slot machines.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know what to do. And a friend of mine said, just find yourself an Italian guy and stand next to the Italian guy and just do whatever he does. So I'm standing there and I have my original $20 and my friend Kim is with me and she's standing behind me and I'm just feeling that I could get whatever numbers I wanted on the dice. So I didn't know which ones you're supposed to get though.
Yeah.
So I'm rolling the dice out and I get the first ones that win. And the next thing I know, people are yelling, shooter, shooter, shooter. And I'm thinking to myself, they want to shoot me, Well, I didn't realize I was the shooter rolling the dice. And there's a guy next to me with a pinstripe sort of suit and a little pencil mustache and pointy, shiny shoes. And I turned to him and I say, why do they want to shoot me? And he said, no, you're the shooter. He said, right now. And he takes his hand and goes around to the table. Do you see all these people? He said, they're all your best friend right now. I said, well, I don't know after the 7 or the 11 what I'm supposed to ask for. He says, I'll tell you. Just like the guy ahead had said to me, find an Italian man. And I said, you're an Italian man? He said, they don't call me, Dino or whatever his name was, right? So he tells me, now you need a 4 or now you need a this. And whatever he would say to me that I would need, I just continued to get that on the dice.
Wow.
So every time I'd get a $25 chip, I'd never won a $25 chip. I'd give it to my friend Kim sitting behind me so that we'd save the money. And by the time I finished my run, I had enough for us to pay for the hotel and being there and the trip that we went on. Awesome. So I think I made $400 or $500, with my original little bit of money. Yeah. And and then when I finally lost my run or whatever, I gave the dice to the Italian man and I said, now it's my time to leave.
Yeah.
And, but it was a definite connection that I knew I could call the dice numbers.
Yeah.
But I can't do that every time I go to a casino or, you know what I mean? I was at the remote viewing conference and all those parts of me were extra stimulated from all the different things the lectures we were hearing, the things we were going to. So I feel that part of me was even more open and receptive at that moment.
Yeah, and now you're banned from all the casinos in Vegas. Did you will the die? Like, how'd you do that? Do you will it? Do you oh, come on, please give me a 6, please give me a 6.
Yes, that's exactly how.
Basically that. Okay, right.
And then it would come out, and I'd go, "Whoa, great!"
Again. Yeah.
So it could be a lucky streak. It could be any of those things. It's not something that I can reproduce anytime I go to a roulette table.
No, it's not the most repeatable thing in the world. But yeah, that's fascinating nonetheless. Last question about your kind of remote viewing experiences, and then I'm going to get some advice from you for beginners, just some brief advice, and then that's pretty much going to be us for today. There's so many questions I have left on the table for next time. But yeah, so have you ever tried to remote view the afterlife? The afterlife. I'm not a big fan of the word the afterlife because it kind of implies a place like heaven or whatever. But when I say the afterlife, have you ever tried to remote view the other side, say kind of whatever happens and that kind of thing?
I've never tried to remote view the other side, but I have visited or connected to people and I feel very close with death. Mm-hmm. That I know a lot about Like when death comes, I can feel it coming, or
Yeah,
my body experiences it. But I've never even ever thought of remote viewing into the afterlife because I feel connected to it just, like as a medium or whatever you want to use.
Yeah. Would you consider it now that I've mentioned it, or is it something that you're like, it kind of like the pyramids, like better left,
No, I don't.
better left alone?
I wouldn't be afraid to do it. I'll have to ask Russell. Should we try to remote view into the
Yeah, yeah.
afterlife? That would be a
Can I?
very interesting
I'd love to
question.
be a fly on the wall if Russell won't mind me sitting silently and being in the Zoom, like watching you.
There is an experiment that, I don't know anyone who has the money or would fund it. I think when I mentioned it to I'm not sure which scientist, but I'm curious as to how, we know I'm telepathic, okay, but I've been able to do telepathy with people in other countries, in other languages where neither of us speak the same language. So
Yeah.
how could I get this information when we're not talking the same? I don't have an answer for this. This is something I would love a scientist to try and figure out. How does that work?
Yeah.
How do
I think.
you telepathically know? And down to amazing information, like when I had this Mongolian shaman here, she didn't speak a word of English and she was initiating me as a shaman. She wanted these certain different things. She would just think of it in her mind, and I would come and appear with the brush or the herbs or something from Siberia that she wanted, and I would just know that that's what she was saying.
Yeah.
Or when I lived in Mongolia for a couple of weeks with a shaman family, the translator would say, there's no need for me to translate because you're both saying the same things at the same times. I stayed in Japan in a Japanese family and they were having some difficulties. I knew everything that was going on, what the daughter did, why these things happened. I don't know about that. And I'm very curious about that. I mean, it's one thing when I'm doing English to English. What's happening when I'm knowing information and there's no way that woman is thinking, okay, I want this in English, Gail, could you get me that? How is there a communication of telepathy with no languages being spoken the same in that place?
Yeah, that's super fascinating and bizarre. And obviously, I'm not going to try and dare to give you an explanatory framework, but I mean, I think it's on some level higher than language. I think language is our kind of human thing, that our physical brain and everything like that. I think maybe this is coming from somewhere on a higher plane. And it reminds me of, like, in some, examples with mediumship, I'm thinking particularly of, I think maybe physical mediums, where they will suddenly kind of have somebody come through and they'll talk or sing even in a language that they have never spoken or heard, or never had even exposure to this language, and then maybe it will be recorded in the notes or something, and which will be then, there'll be then people that will look at it and like, okay, yeah, this is a real language, and this we think this is archaic Chinese or whatever it might be. And so it's kind of related, I think, and it's just super super interesting. It's
the shamans of Mongolia, when they go into their shamanic place, they turn into the spirit of the person that they work with for shamanic work.
Oh, wow.
When you see a 28-year-old drop dead, beautiful Mongolian woman that's so pretty that could be on the cover of a modeling magazine, and she turns into a wretched old 85-year-old wrinkly man, and you see it happen before your eyes.
Yeah.
You can't believe that. But they embody the spirit, or the spirit embodies them, and they turn into that. And they have a few different, like one particular shaman, she has a young little child that works with her. So all of a sudden, this huge shamanic lady turns into a giggling, laughing little child to do this work. And is not the lady that you were just talking to.
You see the physical changes.
Yes.
I think they call that transfiguration, right? And I think, again, that's something that is quite prevalent in physical mediumship. Well, not quite prevalent. It happens. It can happen. Like where Stuart Alexander, I don't know if you know Stuart Alexander, somebody I've spoken with on this podcast. He's very well-known physical medium in the UK. Leslie Kane wrote about him in Surviving Death. Anyway, he's done that a couple of times. In fact, one of my guests I did have on this show had an experience with Stuart. Another one of the guests I had on the show had an experience with Stuart where he saw like the face of his, can't remember if it was his mother or his grandmother, but the face of one of his loved ones kind of over the top of Stuart's face. And I mean, like, wow.
So
what do you what do you do with that?
Right. So I can't relate to it in remote viewing, but I can relate to it in those situations.
Yeah. I'd love to have an experience like that, or anything that's kind of like unmistakably anomalous, like without a doubt, something where you don't you're not left like questioning yourself over and over, like anyway, let's get on to my last kind of topic here. So just any brief tips, advice, suggestions, anything, help, assistance, guidance for people that might want to try, including me, that might want to try remote viewing, beginners basically.
Well, I think there's a gentleman that I've had on my show, and I went out to Colorado to meet him. So I could say I highly recommend him. He's a very reputable person.
Mm-hmm.
And he has videos on YouTube.
Is it Paul?
No, his name is Sean McNamara.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he just wrote a book called Dewdrops of Infinity, where he did an experiment of remote viewing with microdosing mushrooms.
Yeah.
And to see whether the remote viewing would be more enhanced, less enhanced, about the same, and what each different individual experienced doing that. And, he offers different, and I don't think they cost any money, and they're online in YouTubes, and he has remote viewing, or, there's different courses that some people give. I personally would steer away from the people that want $2,000 and $3,000 to teach you remote viewing.
Yeah.
I'm not criticizing anyone who does that, but I don't think you need to spend that kind of money to learn how to be a remote viewer.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely read some of Russell's books about the history of it if they want to know about that. I would definitely have them watch Third Eye Spy to learn about the history. They don't feel like reading. But I would tell them all that they can all do this. This is not some sort of a skill that, only certain types of people can do this. No. Russell has proved over and over again, he can go into a large group in a conference somewhere and teach people to do remote viewing on the spot and in another language.
Yeah.
I think that, as I said in the beginning, remembering about your inner voice and remembering about your bodily, intuitive, gut level feelings to guide you through doing this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that when people say, oh no, I'm not psychic or whatever, I'm not intuitive, I believe we are all intuitive and psychic, or we all have knowingness. I just think that sometimes a lot of it gets shoveled down into the depths of ourself through religion, being told this or that in school.
These things that are constantly...
there's all these things that can make you feel that there's nothing to believe in other than this physical reality, that's how it all functions. I think being in nature and connecting with nature is another one of the ways to bring yourself back into that. And I think even with, like remote viewing, not every remote viewing I've ever done was perfect. Not every remote, like I can't sit down and play anything at the piano, but, chopsticks or whatever. I can't play any music on a piano. My husband can sit down and just hear a song from somebody and play the entire thing like he's been playing it for years.
Yeah, well, Tiger Woods sometimes hits a bogey, right? Sometimes hits 3 over par or whatever. Like
exactly. Yeah. So I think that there are some people, that may be more skilled in remote viewing, but I believe just like piano playing or sports or any of these things, everyone has times when they're really in the zone and it happens. In fact, this would probably be the time for me to tell your audience, if they would like to practice, because I'm doing another experiment right now with Russell.
Mm-hmm.
He has 2 apps online. They were free for many years, but now they're a whopping 99 cents. So I think most people can afford it. And my husband actually designed and made the apps for Russell.
Cool.
And one is called ESP Trainer,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is called Stargate ESP.
Cool.
And I highly recommend them as a training. It's what was used for the military and the CIA when they were training them. It was actually a big box, a wood box, which used to be sitting here in the house when my husband was making the app. And it had these color lights, and you had to touch which color light you thought would come up. So the app on your phone, which is on Apple phones, one of them, I'm not sure if they both work on Android and Apple, I'm not sure, but you have to pick a color square. And when you touch the red or the yellow or the blue or the green, if the picture's hiding behind that one, you hear a lovely kind of meditation bell, and this picture of somewhere in National Geographic photos comes up. And you do 24 of them, and it rates you as useful in Las Vegas or a good beginner or ESP ability present. And what it teaches you is that you'll start to see which was the color you picked in your mind that you actually chose.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the one that fleeted by really quickly and is the real one that comes up? Or was it the one where you said, let me think, which one is it?
Yeah.
And those 4 little squares can teach you, like for me, I would always be guessing. I'd press red, and the second color would be the red. The first color that it should have been is yellow.
Mm-hmm.
But I would always be seeing what the next color was going to be. And you start to see a pattern, and you start to understand how to separate in your mind which one is the one that's really going to show me the picture.
Yeah.
So I would advise that for 99 cents to help if you're wanting to train.
Yeah.
And the other one, which is the one I've been working with a lot right now, is the Stargate ESP. In this one, which is only a few years old, a person has information, and it's wanting to know what the target. There's 24 photos, and the first photo is hidden there, but they're going to ask you 2 questions. Are there buildings in this photo? Is there water in the photo? And then you click, yes, there's water, or no, there's no buildings. So you've answered 2 of the 24 questions. When you finish the 24 questions, the picture comes up. It also says pick which picture you think, because you'll see 4 pictures at the end. Which one matches what you think your remote viewing is? So that's also very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need anyone to do this. It's just you and your phone.
Yeah.
Then you start to see your scores, and you start to do things like I do. Like when I do it first thing in the morning and I wake up, I've been getting a pretty steady 17 out of 24 every morning. When I do it at night, or if I'm tired, or if I'm something else, I get a low score. But you start to learn about how your body is and what mood or state you're in, and which ones do you do more successfully in.
Yeah.
When you're sad, do you do better? When you're happy, do you do better? So it's a fun way to learn, and to learn about how it's functioning in you.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend that if this is what they're looking to do. And then I would go on the YouTubes, and there's famous teachers out there I don't know if there's waiting lists to be in their classes or how much they all charge, but there's other teachers out there if they need to be in a classroom situation where somebody's teaching them remote viewing directly. They do it online now. So I guess that would be another form also for, committing to wanting to learn about remote viewing.
Brilliant. That's great. If you could send me the links to those apps, or the names, just to make sure I can find them, I'll try and put the links in the description. Would you say that, like, engaging in meditation and stuff and practicing meditation also kind of can really improve or increase your kind of chances with this?
I do believe that it does. In fact, there's studies that Dean did with this.
Yeah.
And that meditators have an easier time of focusing and stilling the mind for the information. So I myself have, all my things in life, I've never been Like anything I do it for a while, then I don't do it for a while, then I do it for a while again. I've never been, I didn't finish high school. I'm not somebody that like whatever does a steady thing and continues at it. When I've been doing, and I've done intense meditation, I've done 9 days of silent meditation where you meditate 12 to 14 hours a day, and you do walking meditation, sitting meditation, walking meditation, sitting.
Just making a note of that for next time. I'll ask you about that. So carry on.
Yeah. Well, I had cancer at the time, so I was doing it to heal myself.
Wow.
And after that silence, which a talking person like myself could never believe she could do, my telepathic and images and dreams and vision and that sort of thing was the sharpest ever.
Wow.
And I could walk up to a person, I'd say, during my meditation, I saw you doing this, this, and this, and them say, yes, that's exactly what. So I but I'm not, I'm not ready to jump into 9 days of silence again. I was doing it for a serious cause of wanting to survive cancer at the time.
Yeah.
But these people that I know for a fact that Dean meditates every day, Russell meditates. And I think that meditation, I wish I could do that every day, but I find that I try to do meditation in something that I'm doing when I'm working at something that's repetitious. So if I'm processing for 5 or 6 hours drying apples, I think of it as a meditation because it's just me and the apples. And we're just doing this repetitious thing over and over, and I'm focusing on that same thing. But I would like to be a little bit more disciplined like other people and just say, oh, every morning I do this, but I'm not good in the disciplinary area.
Yeah. I feel your struggle there. I need to meditate. I need to start doing that. There's so much potential with it, right? So, yeah.
And also for your body, your heart rate, all these things.
Yeah, the physical stuff too. Would you say, just one last little question about that, when we're doing these apps and stuff to kind of, work on that, is it good to try and be in some kind of, even not a full deep meditative state, but some kind of like mindful, meditative, calm, quiet mind? Is that good, or does it not really matter too much?
I just did a little test on that because I wanted to see, I myself have been a pot smoker for many, many, many years. Let's see, more than 50 years. And I wanted to see, and Russell said to me, when you do this test, because he's having me to test the 2 apps right now to see whether I get more hits on one app with the photos than say the squares. And right now I'm doing 25 of each one. So far it's looking like the newest one, the Stargate ESP, I'm doing double the amount of hits on that. So actually triple than I am with the 4-color squares. Wow. Now, 2 years ago, I was doing incredibly high on the 4-color squares. And I couldn't get, 10 hits on the other one. And now it's reversed. I don't know why. But is actually showing, he wanted me just to do this to see what is the difference in my ratio of, success. I'm sorry, what was the rest of the question on that?
It was about being in, meditative state to do these apps and these kind of practices.
I said to him, and he says to me, because he knows that I smoke pot, he says, and I don't want you doing any of these when you're high. So naturally that he said that, I had to get high and do it. Because I'm a rebellious rat. But anyway, so I got high and I did the test after I did the test first, both of them. And then I went and did it after I smoked. And sure enough, I got a terrible score after I smoked.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yes, and I did really well when I had just done it when I woke up.
Interesting.
So I wrote down a note as I was taking them that this was I wanted to see what the difference would be.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see what would the difference be after I did shamanic things. Because I can't explain what the place is, but it's a certain kind of place, and I don't know how it happens, but it just does. And I did this in the sound healing I did on Monday. So I was feeling very elevated and very connected, positive, energetic way from having done this healing on his wife. And when I came home, I said, I wonder if in that space you'll do better on these testing, and I got my highest score on that.
Wow.
So, but that's only one time, one remote viewing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's would hold true all the time.
Yeah.
But I had to so it's an experiment for my own self also to see when do I do from what I'm seeing so far, my best remote viewing is when I wake up in the morning and I do it first thing.
Yeah. But as with everybody, I guess it's going to be individual to an extent. Like we said before we started the interview proper, like you're used to be a morning person, you're not so much anymore. Some people are going to be way more functioning in the morning. Some people are going to be way more on the ball at night, and everything in between. So yeah, I guess it's a case of you got to find your what works for you. Anyway, as I said, I got so many more questions. We're going to save them for next time. Gail, thank you so much for giving me all your time. You've been so generous, and I've loved hearing your stories. I could do this for hours. Is there any message or last word? Yeah, we did hours more. Is there any message?
3 hours.
Yeah.
I've got a person coming on my podcast in 2 hours. I have to prepare for now.
I'm sorry. I hope I haven't left you in the lurch too much. Are there any last words you wanna send to anybody that's watched and listened? Any brief message or anything like that?
Well,
Could be anything.
I just like with your podcast, I hope people will check out my podcast on YouTube or Apple.
Links will be in the description.
Yeah, any of those things, and also that just like we just did here today, we honestly shared our stories, and I think that's and it's actually an ancient form. Storytelling used to be the way that information was shared and kept amongst tribal people and this sort of thing. Yeah. I think going back and sharing stories with each other and not having to be famous people or anything. I think that this is a beautiful path to be on, to share with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Gail. Really appreciate it. Wish you all my best.
Thank you so much. I'll see you in the internet.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Gail Hayssen. Check out the episode description for relevant links and much more. Please subscribe to Gail's YouTube channel and have a scroll through her videos to see if any of her awesome guests catch your eye. Please subscribe to our channel if you want to continue unraveling the universe with us. If you enjoy our interviews and want us to keep making content, please consider a monthly contribution via Patreon. Thank you for your support.